All right, good evening. It is a little past 6 p.m. and we'll get started on our Board of Education business meeting this evening. With our opening items, we're going to call the meeting to order and then move to 1.02, declaration of a quorum.
A motion to excuse Dr. Brad Thomas and Vanessa Enriquez Plumba.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Bill-Greco?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Moving to 1.03, adoption of the agenda.
A motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Bill-Greco?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Moving to 1.04, time to do the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's go. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, then we'll move to 1.05, report closed session. The Board of Education met in closed session on May 12th, 2022 for the purpose of discussion of personnel agenda items. Moving to 1.06, public comments. Do we have any? Okay. All right, then we will move to the reports. 2.01, the President's Report. We are so proud of our Ritenour High School marching band. Our Huskies traveled to Washington, D.C. over the Memorial Day holiday to participate in the National Memorial Day Parade on May the 30th. The parade is the nation's largest Memorial Day salute to the men and women who have sacrificed for our country. During their trip, the marching band had the opportunity to visit the Marine Corps War Memorial, the White House, Washington Union Station, and the Hard Rock Cafe. Students and staff also had the opportunity to take part in an orchestra clinic with a professor from George Mason University. And I will also add they had the opportunity to visit with Nathan Reefsteck, who is an alumni who is part of Old Guard there in Washington, D.C. So it was kind of interesting to touch base with some of our alumni there too. It is so exciting to see our band featured in this national event. Congratulations and thank you for being such a great representatives of our school district. Moving to 2.02, Superintendents Report, Dr. Chris Kilbride.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. So board members, proud to announce that 3 Ritenour High School rising juniors have been selected to attend Missouri Scholars Academy this summer at Mizzou. Grayson Eaton, Kimberly Kamani, and Kaylin Wooten. We'll spend 3 weeks on Mizzou campus from the 12th of June through the 2nd of July with 300 other top-flight Missouri high school students in this intense summer program. The students represent the top half of 1% of the state's sophomore class, the rising 11th grade. Students selected don't earn grades or credit. They select an academic subject in math, science, social studies, or the humanities for their primary study. Students also have many co-curricular activities, lectures, workshops, and guest speakers that they can have access to. DESE sponsors the Academy along with support from Mizzou. Congratulations to our amazing students who were selected for this program. Board members, one other update. We have a partnership with Eureka College, the Eureka Promise, where any graduating senior from Ritenour High School with a 3.0 GPA can enroll in Eureka College tuition free for 4 years. That standard is being dropped to a 2.8 GPA, which is, large numbers of our students have met and meet that mark. The Board of Trustees from Eureka College is going to be in St. Louis on the 23rd of June, and the President and the Board of Trustees have asked me to come and speak to them about what is it that incoming college freshmen need from their college or university. So instead of me doing it, I thought that reaching out to some recent graduates would be the better way to go. So I reached out to Tessa Ostoff and Azaria Estes, and Azaria is going to go speak to the Board of Trustees of Eureka College on the 23rd. It's out at the Sheraton Westport. So exciting to again have Ritenour students taking over.
It's too bad they're six years late
Right.
for me.
Right back. That's right. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Kilbride. Moving to 2.03, MSBA and SBA report. Vanessa Enriquez-Plumbud is not here, so Jennifer Lonis, if you want to take it from there.
Sure. So this coming up weekend, we have Igniting Great Ideas Summit, which will be out in St. Charles. Do we have anybody attending that?
Vanessa is, she's a delegate.
Okay. And then we have our annual conference coming up in November 3rd. Well, not coming up, it's a while away. So make sure to let Michelle know if you want to attend that. And with that, we'll go to the video.
Can I jump in with a quick note?
Absolutely.
Board members, the Igniting Great Ideas Summit, we're presenting at 1 p.m. Ms. Hahn, Yabeli Lopez, and I. It's a follow-up to the presentation and review, so 1 to 2:15, so looking forward to that.
Hello everyone and welcome to the MSBA Board Report for the month of June. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the recently concluded 2022 regular session of the Missouri General Assembly. Despite some proposed legislation that could have been detrimental to school boards and public schools, there were some significant positives, including a substantial increase in student transportation funding. It will be the first time since 1991 that the state's share of student transportation is fully funded. MSBA's Director of Governmental Relations, Brant Shields, tells us several bills aimed at school boards did not cross the finish line this year.
We worked on a lot of issues this year, specifically regarding school board member recall, moving school board member elections to November, and making school boards run on partisan tickets. There was some momentum out there, but really I think we got our message across that Missourians don't need more partisan politics involved in their school board elections. And I think we were very successful in getting that message across.
Shields says an education omnibus bill with more than 30 provisions, including changes to the way literacy is taught and support for what's known as competency-based education, was passed by the General Assembly. We will be providing you with more details on all the provisions of that bill. Shields says now that the session is over, it's still important for board members and administrators to stay in touch with legislators and candidates for the legislature during this election year.
Absolutely. I believe that our school board members definitely need to get involved with those who are running for office. Because those who are running to represent you in Jefferson City need to know what the concerns and the issues that are going on in your community are. And the best way to find that out is through our school system. Schools are the heartbeats of our communities, and you all are their elected leaders. So please reach out to those who are running for office and get to know them, because when it comes time next year when they're voting on important public education bills, they'll have a relationship with you and you'll be able to talk to them about how those issues could affect districts in their hometown.
Shields says the advocacy work of school board members paid significant dividends during this year's legislative session. The legislature did address the issue of teacher pay this year by approving Governor Parsons' recommendation to increase the baseline teacher salary from $25,000 to $38,000 a year through a matching grant program. Under the program, the state would provide local school districts with 70% of the salary costs needed to meet the new minimum starting salary, and local school districts would provide the remaining 30%. While that plan may be helpful to some school districts in the state, much more is needed to improve Missouri's low teacher salaries and help attract and retain teachers in our public schools. MSBA's immediate past president, Linda Doherty, says Missouri needs a sustainable plan for raising teacher salaries across the board.
Our state is facing a teaching shortage, and it will only continue to grow in the future if we do not find practical, sustainable solutions to increase pay for well-deserving teachers. Education is critical to the health of our communities. Teachers train and equip our students with the skills they need to enter the workforce. The workforce availability drives economic development within our state and creates jobs within our communities, which ultimately affects the quality of life for each of our students and families.
Doherty is the president of the Nixa Board of Education that recently passed a resolution urging the state to partner with Missouri's public schools to have the revenue needed to provide long-term sustained salaries for all teachers. A Blue Ribbon Commission established by the State Board of Education, charged with developing recommendations to address teacher recruitment and retention challenges in Missouri, is beginning its work this month. MSBA past president Rhonda Gilstrap of Blue Springs is a member of that Blue Ribbon Commission. MSBA's positions on state and federal education issues are determined by the Delegate Assembly that will be meeting this coming November. If your school board has a position statement on an issue you would like to submit to the Advocacy Committee for consideration, you can do so this summer. The Advocacy Committee reviews those proposals and makes recommendations to the Delegate Assembly that determines MSBA's positions on issues. Make your plans now to attend the 2022 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators, to be held November 3rd through the 6th in Kansas City. The event will once again feature some outstanding general session speakers, along with a wide variety of concurrent sessions, many presented by school leaders from districts throughout the state. Registration information for the conference will be posted on the MSBA website. And don't forget the 2022 Safe Schools and Colleges Forum, sponsored by MSBA's Center for Education Safety, will be held this year on November 3rd in conjunction with the annual conference in Kansas City. Past and present members of local school boards can be nominated for the 2022 Paul Morris Community Service Award. This award is for those who have shown an outstanding commitment to local community service. Nominations will be accepted through Friday, July 1st, and the award will be presented at the MSBA Annual Conference. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from...
Any questions? All right.
I think so. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Moving to 2.01, Special School District Report, Ruth Bell Greco.
Yes, I apologize that I do not have slides. It's been a rough week, didn't get to it, but I did attend the meeting. Rob could not be here tonight because he has another meeting with the SSD, so he couldn't come. So I will tell you that in the report from the PAC was that he will remain the vice president next year. He is this year, and he will remain again next year. The goals that they had were reaching out to the north and south areas to get more people involved in PAC. They completed that to get more families, and they completed that. And to communicate in native language, to have their stuff, the Spanish portion has been completed. There were a lot of concerns brought up about the PAC and what not about the PAC, but what the PAC is finding out regarding if our SSD students are getting what they deserve. And different members brought up and asked questions about things that had happened in their districts. I did text with Rob today, and he told me that the partnerships agreements need a lot of work. They're very vague in certain areas. They are going to meet to review the partnership agreements on the 30th of June, and the new agreement will be sent out to us no later than the 30th of September, with a due date of signing it no later than the 31st of October. They also talked about the redistricting that's been done. They do it after every census, and they came in last July. All sub-districts, they would like to keep them similar, between 100 and 140,000 students. So doing that with the changes that came in with the census, Hazelwood and Jennings had decreased, so they added Maryland Heights to that, and then Ladue and Clayton wound up switching. Ladou's in 6 now, and Clayton's in 7. So Clayton was in ours, now Clayton is in the other one, and we have Ladue. We had a report on the strategic and the CSIP. The 33% post-grad follow-up needs to improve. We have budget updating, which is very similar to what we do here when you have to, move things around the end of the year. And that was approved. It also gave us update on the next year's budget and their deficit spending, and you know I do not care for deficit spending at all, so I asked the question about that. All he said was they have a plan, so I asked the question, what is the plan? And he said because their reserves are so high, it's a way to get the reserves down, so they're not too large. So, okay, I understand that. There are action items for approval of the CSIP, the budget adjustments I already talked about, and okay, so that was that, governing council. Then they did a long thing for all new governing council members. They went through what we're all about, which we already, I don't think anybody wants to hear all that again. I think I reported that last year. And then we the reorganization just like we do after an election. So it's Keisha Lee will be the chair. And Riverview Gardens will will be the vice chair, and Kevin Martin will be the recording secretary. And there were, I don't remember any events, and the announcements were that the Jennings rep to the committee, to the governing council, is stepping down because he's physically moving to a new house in Florissant. And then we adjourned, so.
Was it fairly well attended, hopefully?
Yeah, it was.
Sometimes
No, it was fairly well attended, yes, as a matter of fact, yeah. Got a lot of business done. It was a long meeting, but it did accomplish a lot, so.
No, thank you for being there, and thank you. Tell Rob that we appreciate him and his work too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he's vice
I did
president.
already tell him.
I think that's wonderful. I know, but for everybody, I think that that's so important.
Yeah.
He's a real go-getter.
Yes, he is, so, anyway. We're in good hands while he's there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions? No? Okay, well, we'll start to move to our business items. Up first is 3.01, School for Early Childhood Education Reorganization, Mr. Dwight Lindhorst.
Good evening. And you can see Dr. Jennifer Singleton is joining me, and she will start off.
Good evening, everyone. Just starting off with that connection of this entire process to our vision, Ritenour School District, in partnership with parents and community, will develop leaders recognized for academic excellence and produce graduates who will become productive citizens and live lives of personal integrity and fulfillment. And also our mission, the mission of Ritenour School District, is to ensure learning occurs in a supportive environment that enables every student to think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse global society. And the part of the equity statement that connects directly to what we're speaking about tonight, equity in Ritenour means a commitment to building positive, purposeful relationships with every student and every family so that barriers to learning at high levels are removed. We would serve as many preschool students as we can, regardless of their family's ability to pay tuition.
So again, our goal would be to provide pre-K ed education at no cost to district families. We can accomplish this, as we spoke last week, about claiming pre-K average daily attendance as part of the basic formula, state funding formula, and it would generate basic formula and classroom trust fund state revenue. Students must qualify for free and reduced lunch and not be in a special ed classroom in order to be eligible. And as we'll talk about later, but we talked, Dina Hill made note that CEP, the Community Eligibility Provision, would be extended to the School for Early Childhood. Therefore, everybody would be eligible if they're in a regular classroom, not a special ed classroom. So the funding plan would be to have 10 classrooms at 18 to 20 students each, with a teacher and a TA or a para, up to the building capacity of 240. So in the future, we look to serve just resident or in-district pre-K students only. Transitionally, we'll continue to serve both typically developing students and students with an IEP, and in the future. It just depends on what mix we would have as we move forward. So again, we were tracking claim student attendance like K through 12 right now. 95% student attendance for 180 to 200 students. Again, 10 classrooms at 18 to 20. Would provide 1 to 1.2 million in extra basic formula revenue. And the projected budget next year for the building is 1.37 million.
So next year would be considered a transitional year. Current resident and non-resident students would continue until eligible for kindergarten. So students that are enrolled right now in the 21-22 school year would be able to continue. Non-resident students will pay tuition at current rates. Resident students will go tuition free. Resident students enrolled before June 10th would be enrolled. Non-resident students that submitted enrollment would be given notification that at this time only residents are accepted into Ritenour School for Early Childhood Education. The announcement that the school will be tuition free will be communicated June 10th, pending board approval. An enrollment deadline will be included in the announcement, possibly June 30th. All registrations received June 10th through June 30th will be held for a lottery to fill remaining spots. The lottery will give each student a place on a waiting list. Any enrollments after the lottery date will go at the end of the waiting list in the order as received by the SEC. Current resident students would continue until eligible for kindergarten. Students must remain at that 95% attendance rate to remain in the program. Those students on the waiting list would be enrolled as spots open. An annual enrollment deadline would be communicated. All registrations received by the deadline would participate in a lottery to fill those remaining spots. The lottery will give each student a place on a waiting list. Any enrollments after the lottery date will go at the end of the waiting list in order as received by the SEC. We anticipate higher interest in tuition-free program, which could lead to an increased demand for space. The program could transition to only 4-year-olds to serve more students for at least 1 year prior to kindergarten. State funding is limited to a maximum of 4% of regular K-2 through 12 ADA, about 229 students. Any questions?
So we would get state funding, but it'd only be 4%. Is that what you're saying?
We could only claim up to 4% of whatever our regular ADA is. So right now, last year's ADA was about 5,923. 4% of that is about 229 students. If our ADA goes up to 6,000 students, 4% would be 240. So it just depends on what our regular ADA is. So the more we increase regular K-12 attendance, the more students we could claim for pre-K. Conversely, if it goes down,
If we claim 4% of the total enrollment, I'm confused here.
4% of total average daily attendance for
Okay.
K through 12.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there any other districts that are doing this as well, so we can see how their programs are going in terms of 1, 2, 3-year projections? Because I'm thinking when we have something like this available, there's going to be a lot of kids and more enroll, and we only have so much space.
That's correct. I'm not aware of any. I know there are some in the state. I'm sorry, I forgot to look at that after you guys asked last week, but I know there are some in the state, all across the state. I don't know about the county.
Okay, and I want to make sure that we have enough room, because there's going to be kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, there is a limit if we're going to do tuition free, because we can only claim up to 4%. But you know, I think it's better to serve as many as we can tuition free, and then if we need to go back to a tuition-based program for others, maybe that's what we have to do. Or look at another, you know, we did talk about 2 different possible programs, so.
So in the future, we can combine those.
Right.
Yeah, so board members, we anticipate significant interest, so serving up to 229 students as we move forward in some years. We expect that, you know, far beyond 229 are going to be interested in the program. A vision that we could have is we enroll 500 kindergarten students each year. The idea of having a space in a Ritenour early childhood program for every one of those 500 children before they enter kindergarten, I think would be a great vision down the road.
And as we discussed about statewide advocacy, it might be pushing the legislature to adopt a higher percentage that could be claimed for pre-K, so than 4%.
I have a question about our district teachers. Are we thinking they're students, even though if teachers don't actually live in the district, would they have a spot or?
Not under this recommendation.
For, if there are Ritenour teachers that have students that are already enrolled in attending the program.
Yeah, I'm just
they
asking
would
because I know
continue.
that some of like Maplewood, Richmond Heights, I know that's how they have it, where their students can come, or, you know, the teachers' child,
Yes.
yeah.
So if they're already enrolled, they would continue, but under this proposal, if they're newly enrolled educators, students, they would not be eligible to attend.
Are we communicating, sorry, go ahead. Okay, are we communicating that lottery date and the communication that goes out tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're putting,
Yes.
when the lottery's going to happen, because you know everybody's going to be sitting there.
The deadline for
Twiddling their thumbs.
for enrollment, for submitting your packet, and when the lottery will come out.
Okay, thank you.
What's the average classroom size right now?
18 is what the maximum is, right?
No, I'm saying what do we currently have in the classrooms?
It's about 15, I believe.
So we think this, with this 18 to 20 number, we're okay with that with this age group in the classroom?
Well, again, there has to be a balance between what we can afford and what we can provide. So in order to get it close to break even, we need to have 18 to 20 students in there in order to provide tuition free. Although, as we talked about, the program has not been breaking even. So I think our philosophy is serve as many students as possible, even if the class sizes are a little higher.
Will it be more than one teacher in the classroom?
It has to be a teacher and a TA, or a paraprofessional, as there is now.
Yeah, I do have some reservations about that with that age group, but I get what you're saying about breaking even, but I do have some reservations about the classroom size with that age group. That's a lot.
Okay. Any other questions?
While we might think 500 would be good, not everyone will take the free stuff. Some people, you know, send them to church daycares because they want them to learn the, you know, their religion or whatever. Some of them, you know, want to be in a home instead of around, a lot of other kids, so.
Absolutely. I think the equity part is that we're, right now, it's all tuition based, so if you can't afford it, you have no choice.
Right.
At least here, you would have a choice.
Yes, agree.
And also, I think it's to Lisa's point of like, if something's not sustainable, or if like that, word of mouth is a huge thing for early childhood, right? And so people will go to things without even really knowing what's going on in there because they just hear from their friends or their parent, you know, whatever. And so I'm glad that you brought up that the sort of amount of students, because if it's unsustainable and the parents start to feel like it's kind of crazy in there, or like, oh, they don't have control over the kids, that perception really does seep into the community, even if it's a great program and we're trying, you know. So I'm just saying that that's a reality of early childhood. And so I understand like trying to serve everyone, and also we want to do quality, right? And so it's.
How many physical classrooms are there?
There are 14 classrooms in the school. 10 being used, what we would be using for typically developing students, and 4 would be a mixture of those students with IEPs and typical developing. Supported by special school district.
So really, if we had to, the answer is that we need to add more teachers, because we can make smaller classrooms, right? Is my calculation correct?
Yes, yes, you can make smaller classrooms, but the cost would go up. So the funding would not match the budget.
Which it still doesn't today.
That's correct, but the deficit could be larger.
Which we have to make a decision at that point. Is it better to educate them and get them ready for kindergarten? Or is it
Yes.
better to shove more kids into one classroom?
You know, so, good conversation. The NACE standard, so the National Association for the Education of Young Children, the standard is 18 per class for 2. And so we've been following the national standard. That NACE accreditation, when it was implemented years back, it was used as a tool to drive tuition paying. So that 18 to 20 class size is really where those class sizes came from. We don't need to continue to be pegged to NACE accreditation. That would be a choice that we would make together. But in terms of the class sizes being extremely large or being, you know, far beyond what's best practice, we're pretty close to where best practice would be.
And while I understand that, I mean, since I've been in this district, this is a conversation, and I think that we learned a lot during COVID that the smaller classroom sizes, you heard from students, that's something that's beneficial for you. And I get what the studies say, but in my experience in talking to students and families, like that smaller classroom intimacy does make a difference and has a greater impact on the students. So I get the studies. I get the best practice. I'm just saying.
Makes sense.
Okay, well, we do have a recommended action for this, if you wanted to.
I don't have that.
So I would like to motion to approve the tuition-free structure for district resident students and the transitional plan for the School of Early Childhood Education as presented.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Ms. Lover Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Belgreco? Yes. Ms. Enriquez Finbutt?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let us know what you need.
I have several more, thank you.
Yes, don't go anywhere.
It's the Mr.
Thank
Linda
you.
show.
Thank you so much. So we're moving to 3.02, the budget hearing, with Mr. Dwight Lindhorst. I'm going to read through the executive content which you told me that I had to make sure to read through.
Okay.
It says that the board president states that this is the scheduled time for the hearing for the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. Mr. Dwight Lindhorst will summarize the budget. The president sets a time limit for the individual comments and may set a maximum time for public comments. So there is a 3-minute time limit for individuals and a 30-minute limit for the hearing, as recommended. And so I now open it.
Thank you. So again, the district cannot meet its vision or its mission without sufficient resources. And for finance, what that means is allocating resources based on student need instead of equally per building. Again, the budget document contains 4 different sections with a lot of information in it. It's over 200 pages. So I will summarize the budget. State aid for next year, you can see what we are finally expecting to get this year, almost $27.5 million, and next year almost $27.4 million. About a $106,000 decrease. It's a little, really it's due to the weighted ADA dropping a bit, and that's the summer school again, they changed the way the teachers have to be certified, and so we're going to fund some of this summer school out of ESSER funds, and we won't be able to claim it's quite as many students. Tax revenue this year is an even year, so it is not a reassessment year, so I anticipate very little change. Really, it's just due to a little new construction, and again, trying to remain conservative. Prior year taxes are over $1.2 million this year, but still budgeting the 6% that I always budget based on the assessed value, and so that decreases about $145,000. Merchants and manufacturers surtax has also come in above budget. So while it's showing 130,000 less, that's just budgeting conservatively, hopefully. So the operating budget summary, you can see this year we're anticipating a surplus of at least 1.6 million. Next year, revenues slightly higher, expenditures higher by 1.6 million, and so the operating surplus right now is 457,000, but we would still end with over $32 million in operating fund balance, which would be 40% of our expenditures.
Even with paying all that money, $250,000 for bread?
Yes.
I can't get it.
It's ridiculous. I mean, totally.
Especially when they don't eat it.
Yeah,
Yes.
just go to the trash.
Sorry, we're digressing.
Just want to make sure it was included, that's a big chunk.
Yes, it is included. So during this year, we've added, as you know, the board's approved positions that we've added during this year. So from the beginning of the 21-22 year, we've added these positions, and they are again included in next year's budget. 1 dean of student at the high school, 5 student support specialists at the high school, 2 security support specialists, again at the high school, 2 alternative teachers, 1 alternative school counselor, and 1 student support TA at the high school in that new alternative program that is housed at the high school. These are increases that we are adding for next year. 1 new elementary section, 2 middle school reading interventionists, 1 for each middle school, 1 EL teacher at the IWC, International Welcome Center, 2 bilingual therapists, 1 bilingual family liaison, 1 security specialist at Hake Middle because of where the office is located, and then 2 Needham students, 1 at each middle school. Increases for next year continued, 2 instructional coaches, 1 secondary instructional facilitator, 1 junior ROTC, an officer, and 1 enlisted in order to start the program. 2 high school teachers, 1 math and 1 social studies, and 2 middle school TAs, 1 at each middle school, as well as renaming 1 high school assistant principal to an associate principal, which will actually be cost neutral due to decreased summer school supervision, an extra duty contract related to that. So the decrease we have is a computer business teacher at the high school. That's due to retirement, and we haven't found anyone certified to replace that teacher yet. And enrollment projections continue to remain very stable, ticking up slightly all the way to 6318 in 26-27. And as you know, the district's undergoing more scientific enrollment projection process, so we'll be hearing about that in a few months.
May I stop and ask a question real quick?
Sure.
So with the early childhood, would that then be added into our accounts here when that comes?
So yes, it will. You know, I don't actually know if DESE, how they do this. This has always been K-12 that we've
Right.
looked at enrollment. So we'll either continue to just look at K-12 so we can do that, or we'll go back and reframe it so it's all pre-K-12. However, we want to be consistent,
Right.
whatever we're showing. So,
Right.
but this is just K-12 enrollment.
Okay. I just, like, next year if we saw a number and it
Right.
increased by 200 and
Right.
something, we'd,
No, we'll try to,
okay.
we want to compare apples to apples.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Yep. So I can answer any questions you have at this point.
You already answered mine.
Any other questions? Okay. I'll go ahead and, the public hearing regarding the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget is now closed. Moving to 3.03 budget approval, Mr. Dwight Lindhorst, you will present the 2022-23 budget to the Board of Education for approval.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that's the, you have the document, but that's the summary. The I just wanted to make sure there weren't any public comments. I know there was one visitor, so. Did you have any comments on the budget? Okay. So I recommend to the board that you approve the 22-23 budget as presented.
Where'd Vanessa go?
So you have to go
Okay.
step up.
Okay. So I'll motion to approve the 2022-2023 proposed budget as presented.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Belgreco?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to 3.04, end of year budget amendments.
Yes, so each year the board approves this amendment, which authorizes me as the treasurer to make changes in the budget amounts per line item or per fund, just to make sure that we're in accordance with all the budgetary laws, the budgetary statutes in Missouri, and generally accepted accounting principles. So I would recommend that the board approve that as they annually do.
So can I go ahead? I'd like to make a motion to authorize the chief financial officer, its treasurer, with approval from the superintendent to make transfers and amendments as needed to comply with all applicable regulations, statutes, and general accepted accounting principles as recommended.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Belgreco?
Yes.
And you'll have to.
Yeah, I'll pass, yeah.
And I'll vote yes. All right. Moving to 3.05, meal price report, community eligibility, child nutrition benefits, or bids. Mr. Dwight Linsmore.
Yes, thank you. Dina couldn't be here tonight, so I think we had a good conversation at the work session last week. The board asked a lot of questions, so I'll just review her presentation. Again, to meet our mission and vision, we believe that students need to be fed and healthy food, and that they're not hungry so that they can learn in school, and prioritize every interaction with parents, student, guests, and colleagues. So again, these are the items that we bid on. These are the categories: dry goods, frozen foods, general supplies, fresh produce, milk and juice, bread, and pizza. And this is the vendor list that Dina sent out to. So they select items to bid, they look at specifications for each of those items, they project estimated usage based on past usage and what changes they're going to make, select delivery locations, days, and times as that affects prices, and then they send those to the vendors electronically. So for frozen, dry, and general supply items, you can see they bid 228 dry food items, 234 frozen, and 49 general supply items. So on these, they award by line item. They go through each of those items and select the lowest price and award those by line item. So for coal, you can see frozen foods, dry foods, and general supplies, the totals of each of those categories. $1,540,188 based on projected usage. And for Gold Star, some frozen foods and dry foods, no general supplies, for a total of $98,257. The fresh produce is based on a point in time, the week of May 13th, and they award that to one vendor, bottom line, and you can see that Jackson Produce was the low bid on that. Milk and juice, again, it's awarded to one vendor, bottom line, based on May 22 prices, and Prairie Farms continue to be the lowest. That's our current vendor. And then the bread is, again, by bottom line, 3 vendors bid, and Bimbo Bakeries, it was low at $235,000. Low. It's the lowest acceptable bid. You know those terms.
$250,000, yeah.
Bill Greco. And pizza, this is the outside pizza that they serve every other week in schools, and awarded by Bottom Line, and got bids from Pizza Hut and Domino's, and I'll go in a little more detail on that. So these are the recommendations. Again, coal for those items, and Gold Star for those items. Jackson Produce, as I said, Prairie Farms for milk and juice, Bimbo on the bread, and then Pizza Hut and Domino's bidding, awarding roughly half to each, as she wants to create a variety in those schools that are getting it every other week. And so really, Pizza Hut will be once a month, and Domino's once a month in each of those schools. So the total recommended is $2,383,674 for the year. And then this is a comparison you can see from year to year. You can see that everything is up, especially bread. We again still have not gotten our reimbursement rates through USDA, through DESE, but I would assume that they will adjust those rates due to the high inflation, and so I would anticipate that will be okay, along with increased participation. One thing that has really helped is breakfast in the classroom, increase our participation. So, and I think kids really enjoy it. Staff, I think there's a mixed reaction, but I think we are increasing our student participation in breakfast, which I think is a good thing. So kids are ready to learn. Any questions?
Any questions?
I would like to make a motion to approve the cost of the child nutrition food/goods bids totaling $2,383,674 as presented.
Second?
Okay. Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Paul Greco?
Yes.
Mrs. Enriquez Klimpa?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you.
Yes, exactly.
Are we not doing the meal price? Oh,
Next
sorry.
one.
There's, okay.
There were two different agenda items.
Okay, so we're moving to 3.06, the construction.
Now we have to do the meal
he's got to finish
prices.
this one.
The meal
There's not a
price.
recommendation
I'm sorry.
on here for it, so
Aha.
that's
I'm
why
sorry.
we're all confused.
Okay.
But we'll make up
Gotcha.
a recommendation.
Yes,
here.
I'll make a recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, this is really about the meal price, and it's really only about adults. Again, all children, all students receive free breakfast and lunch in the district because of our community eligibility provision. We'll look at the current meal cost and the current meal price for adults. So right now, for this year, our breakfasts are costing $2, and the lunch meal cost is $3.50. Our current meal price for adults is breakfast $2.35 and lunch at $3.75. Again, for CEP, no cost meals for all the students. They don't have to fill out benefit applications. We're relieving those food insecurities and negative meal fund balances that students used to have to deal with, so they can focus on academics. And I talked about the reimbursement rates that we haven't received yet. Again, all schools, including early childhood, will participate in CEP in 22-23. And I'm recommending that we maintain the same meal price for adults, breakfast $2.35 and lunch $3.75.
So moved.
Thank you.
There it is. Thank you.
Second.
Right. Ms. Enriquez Klimpa?
Yes.
Mrs. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Gardner? Yes. Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you.
Now we can move to 3.06, construction proposal.
You're almost.
Should have brought something to drink. All right. So I'd like to discuss two different projects tonight. Again, our vision and our mission depends on having good facilities where students can learn, and for equity, our facilities should provide the best physical environment for learning to occur, and all district schools should provide consistent and equitable environments. So we're going to discuss two proposals. One is the high school art room renovations, one of the art rooms, and then lighting upgrades, additional lighting upgrades. So the art room first is room 318 and through room 320. 320 is a converted storage room with so it's a storage room on the backside. It's a room that the art teacher uses as a studio for specific art projects. And I think you guys have heard about these. Help me with the instruments. Yes, dulcimers. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. And it also contains a dark room, but it's a very small space. The main issue with this space is that the teacher can't supervise students that are working in the art room as well as the small studio. They have separate doors to the hall, and he has to stay basically in the hall and look at two different spaces at once. And so we need to provide these renovations to improve safety and supervision, as well as making the smaller studio larger. One thing about this is the students and parents are very proud of the art that's created in this class. Gets posts. This was a post on, I don't remember what social media outlet it was, but they're very excited about it. So what we need to do is remove the wall between the existing small art studio and the adjoining storage room, making it one larger room, so they can safely access the tools and work on the projects. We need to add HVAC because, again, that was just a storage room originally. We're going to add windows between the existing art room and the studio, again, for supervision, as well as two doors. And we'll remove the existing hallway door into the studio. So there'll just be one door into the hallway for the teacher to supervise, but there'll be two doors plus windows where he can see into the studio to allow for proper supervision and improved safety for students. So this is basically the diagram, and you can see, go up here for a minute. So right now, this is the door that goes into the smaller, this is a wall that divides the studio and the storage room. This is the door to the regular art room. So basically, he stands out here and tries to supervise this way. So we're going to infill this door. There is a door here right now. We'll add a second door here. This is a wall. We would add windows, again, so he can see in. Remove this wall, so this whole space now becomes the studio. And then add cabinets on both sides for storage as requested by the art teacher. And then you can see different machines that would go along the outside. Also have a dark room curtain for that, and two big work tables in the middle, as well as a dust collector. The dust collector would probably be somewhere more in the middle of the room to make sure that sawdust doesn't fly around.
So do we have to stand out in the hall?
No. So now he will be able to be in this regular art room and see in there through either the doors and or all these windows that will look into the studio.
Where's the hall?
This is the hall.
Where's the steps?
Right back there. The back steps are back there. So this is the back end of the.
Is the first room when you come up the steps?
This is in the back of the building.
It's in the southeast corner, in the back southeast corner.
This is a corner. It comes down here like this, but there's steps that go down to the outside. Emergency exit steps. This is an outside wall here, up at the top here.
Oh, is that the road then, right there?
Yes, that's the back. That's the back service drive. Yes.
Oh, that's the parking lot in the back?
Not the parking lot. Where
Two-lane road.
Where faculty park and they make deliveries, and It's the very back of the building.
Perpendicular to Orlando.
Yes. Orlando's over here. Orlando's over here.
Okay.
The back drive, where all the big
Yeah.
cooling towers, that's
So the
back
very-
there.
Yeah,
This is this wall is the very back of the building.
yeah, the back of the building goes like this.
Well, yeah, it's a little, this one kind of goes that way from here, and then that is a back of the building.
So the first section, what they used to call the T.
I'm sorry, I don't have the history.
So I turn off of Orlando make a right into the back. Is that the first building?
Now, it's probably the
Oh, so
middle
that's-
of the whole building.
Like the 160s, the library, all that, it's further west from there. So it's still southeast, back, rear side of the building.
This is 218 and 220, if that helps. Oh,
So if I come in the back, there's a building there. And then it comes way in here and there's a great big open area. And then it goes like this and then there's that to where you go into the back where the quadrant is. I'm just trying to figure out where you're talking about.
Because it'd be the corner, like the T and C halls, it'd be the corner of the C. Right there, after you pass that, where the T is at, then there's that grassy area.
Yeah,
Then the building shuts out again, it's right there.
okay.
thank you, Mike.
That's where I thought it was. That's exactly where I thought it was.
Yes.
I was gonna ask, so you mentioned that the teacher requested that. Has the teacher seen this layout?
Oh, yes.
Okay, did
Oh,
they
yes.
like it? Okay,
Oh, yes.
great.
I mean, well, first of all, he's very easygoing, but this is probably the third or fourth iteration, and we kept asking, how high did he want these cabinets, and how, so, yeah,
Oh, great, okay.
I mean, the teacher was great because he liked it like this, and I think he started asking for like one little thing, and when Mr. Smith saw what was going on in the supervision, he said, no, we need to do way more than that. So now, Mr. Kennedy is for it.
Good, and hopefully we can do more. I mean,
Exactly.
because that's awesome that the students are also really enjoying the art
Yes.
projects and things. It'd be great to be able to expand the
Right.
designated arts studio. Great.
So that's a fairly new wall that you're going to take down to demo the existing partition.
It looks huge in here. This room is very small. It was really if you think about an art room and the storage room that was always behind an art room, it's probably only, 12 or 15 feet deep. This is probably only 30 feet wide. So this wall, yeah, I don't think it's very new. It doesn't go all the way to the deck. It's just put up just to.
Yeah, now that I know where it is,
Okay.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It used to be a huge study hall when I went to school.
Oh, okay.
Don't do that anymore.
Any other questions? And we'll get to the pricing now. Thank you. Sorry. So again, we would do this through GRP Wegman after you guys approve them as a performance contractor. They design the HVAC systems and the electrical needs, and so we would just add this as a change order onto our master contract. All right, the second one is lighting upgrades. As you know, the board approved about $1.6 million contract for all, changing out all of the lighting in the facilities to LED. Again, LED uses significantly less energy than fluorescent lighting, and we're doing that again through GRP Wegman. So in April, you approved that for all the schools, early childhood, elementary, and secondary schools. This, what we're talking about now, is finishing the other four buildings. We wanted to get that one approved as quickly as we could. So this covers the Husky Support Center, the maintenance warehouse, North Athletic Complex, and this building. And again, these improvements are paid for in about 2.5 to 3 years. So, any questions on that before we look at the cost?
So
So on the Husky Sports Center, I'm assuming that when we did a lot of the work, we actually did this, so this
Yes.
is areas that
So-
we didn't change.
Yes, the whole pantry area was already converted to LED.
Okay.
We're really just talking about the first floor, and we're not even talking about the, what will become the Husky Health Center, because we're asking them to take care of that when those renovations are done. So it's really from the pantry office down to the transportation office, just on the first floor. It's very, and then going down that other hallway where technology department is located now. So it's very, very small in the Husky Sports Center. Again, you'll see the cost, but this building is probably the bulk of it. But, you know, this building is used probably more, well, at least as many hours as in a day that any school is too.
Quick question on
Yes.
the North Athletic Complex, is that including light, is it just replacing the existing lights, or actually is it installing lights so they can do things after 6 p.m.?
No, it's just replacing the existing lights with LED. And mainly, it's really just in the building. On the schools, we did existing outside lights also, so whatever lights there are in that whole complex, including in the building, would be converted to LED.
Thank you.
All right, so the cost for these, you can see the art room renovation is $108,165. The lighting upgrades for the four remaining district buildings would be $75,555 for a total of $183,720. Sorry.
And these numbers have been given to us by our GRP person?
Yes, so these are a contracted price, not to exceed, they're guaranteed price.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
So they're gonna eat the cost that they supply, okay?
Correct.
Or if it's less than that, they still get it.
That's correct. Same way as a bid, when we go out for bid, somebody bids $2 million and they only spend 1.7 on it, they still get $2 million.
Any other questions?
All right, you want a motion? I'd like to make a motion that, no, let me go back. It's easier to do it from there. To approve the GRP Wegman to complete renovations to the art room 318/320 at Ritenour High School, and to complete lighting upgrades at the four remaining district buildings totaling $183,720 as presented.
Second.
Who was that?
All right, Mrs. Lomas?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Ms. Clifford Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Belfracco?
Yes?
Ms. Enriquez Plumbutt?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving to
You're
3.07.
You're excused.
Go get a drink.
We welcome Dr. Chris Kilbride.
Good evening, board members. So I'm here to present this month's Return to Learning Plan recommendation here June 9, 2022. At the work session last week, I shared that at some point I'd be recommending that we would just discontinue these monthly Return to Learning Plan recommendations, and much like all that we've learned throughout the pandemic, we have to be prepared to pivot. No longer believe that that is in the best interest of our students, of our staff, or this community. And I do believe that I do need to continue making the recommendation on a monthly basis, and the board considering approving the Return to Learning Plan on a monthly basis. The why for that pivot is, right as we were having that conversation last Thursday, either that next day or the day to follow, St. Louis City, St. Louis County made some announcements around the level of spread of the virus in the region. So want to message to the community, to students and staff, that we are continuing to monitor on a daily basis infections, positivity rates. And if we don't have this as an open item in our business meeting on a monthly basis, could generate more questions than about anything. So Board members, we are continuing with the COVID dashboard during summer school. I continue to believe that the plan that we have in place does not need to be modified. Continue to believe that the trigger that is in place of 2% positive remains appropriate. So as we continue through summer school with the COVID dashboard, that will be released on Thursday afternoons, because summer school, not having children on Fridays, Thursday afternoon is the most appropriate time to release it. You can see the data in the Ritenour School District remains very positive. We currently have 2 positive staff members. We have 1 positive student attending the summer programs at Ritenour High School. So this is not students total. These are only students that are enrolled in our summer programs. That's what we're monitoring. So I've kept the presentation the same, just to keep the, an archive of the narrative, just the changes of where we've been with the return to learning plan. We moved away from quarantines on the 18th of January. We kept updated and stayed in line with the CDC process of only isolating those symptomatic persons, no longer were close contacts, part of the calculus in the plan. Mandatory masking, we went to mask recommended with the board's leadership on the 22nd of February, and also approved that 2% positivity rate by building. So at this point, board members, no longer in the district would we be making district-wide decisions. It's building by building, so the response can be more localized than at the district level. At 2% positive, a building, and this would apply to summer school as well, a building would return to mandatory masking. So in summer school, board members, just want to remind the board, we have smaller numbers of students in our summer school programs. Our 3 elementary sites, we have 2 elementary buildings combined into 1 site. So instead of 6 schools, we have 6 schools combined into 3 total. 2 elementaries going to 1 site. We have about 300 students in each one of our school sites in the summer. So a 2% positivity rate, that's 6 total students. So it's a pretty fine trigger. At our middle schools, we have just over 100 students at each one of our sites, so a pretty fine trigger at our middle schools. And then at the high school, we have around 400 students total, but it's broken up into 3 different sessions. And so the numbers of sessions can be, number of students in each session is a little bit fluid each day, because sometimes students will stay on for credit recovery. So do believe that 2% positive is the right approach to continue to take. We had a short period of time in there where there were restrictions on spectators. That was during the peak of Omicron, I believe, back in January. We did not need to continue that beyond the 1 month. We allowed the outside groups to return to our buildings, rentals and so on was resumed. And then the 10th of March, that federal requirement of mandatory masking on buses, we transitioned to mask recommended on buses, and that's where we remain. So board members, if we do have a building that hits that 2% threshold, and if the building does go back mask mandatory, that would apply to those buses that those children would be riding on. So if it is a situation where the Wyland site is at 2%, then the students that are riding the buses from that site would be mask mandatory on the buses, but that would not apply to a middle school site or a high school site. Again, just trying to be more specific to where the need arises. So again, I do believe that I need to continue to make this presentation. We should have this conversation once a month. You should consider approving this on a monthly basis. Even though it's no longer clear that it's required, I just think it's best practice.
So I appreciate going through and everything, but there's no, I guess my question is, there's no way to just throw it into consent, and if there is a change, then bring it out?
There's the option, if the board would be comfortable with putting it into consent, we could do that as well. But the regular approval on a monthly basis, I think is still the right way to go.
Yeah. Does anybody have any feedback on if we should just put it in consent or if we should expect a presentation of it?
I'm thinking that it would probably behoove us to keep it out of consent until we start school again. And then in September, when we get back in and we know what the numbers, how things are going, that would be probably a good time to move it into consent before we switch it.
I'm confused. You're saying continue each month and open until school starts?
Well, and like we have, this is June, July, August, and then after August, put it in consent in September, just so that we don't do any major transitions. I'm just thinking until we get everybody back in school, everything's good to go, everything's nice and quiet, good time to kind of move it over to a consent agenda item in case there has to be anything that we change. I mean, you can always pull it back out too.
Oh, right, okay.
I think it'll eventually, that's a good place for it.
So then it wouldn't really, oh yeah, we'd come back August, so probably
2
more
weeks
like
before
October,
Labor
right?
Yeah, September, yeah.
Air it out. Okay.
We're still gonna keep the monitoring, so I don't really see what difference it makes truthfully.
I think it would just save some time.
Right.
To put it in consent.
Yeah, well, same
Right.
time to put in consent right now. I mean, if we're gonna put it,
Yeah, no, that's
I don't understand what the difference is.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any changes since March 10th, and so that was why I just suggested that maybe we just
Yeah.
put it into consent. And then if something does come up and we feel that there's an issue, we need to pull it out, then it would be pulled out and then a discussion. I mean, we're seeing the same presentation month over
Yeah.
month.
Right.
The only thing about, and it was a good conversation that we had today in the board president meeting, advance notice, right? So waves tend to come, and we don't want, so if we would ever have to go to mask mandatory, and a comment that I made today, if what we're hearing about positivity rates continues to come along, there's a likelihood that one of our buildings may have to go mask mandatory. And it would be in the community's best interest, it would be in that building's best interest to have advance notice that that's still a possibility, because it's somewhat of a kind of an out of sight, out of mind kind of a thing. And if there's not, I think this is my response to your question, Jennifer, if there's not ongoing dialogue in open sessions, people might think it's just completely gone away. And then if a building does get to a mask mandatory environment, if we're continuing to talk about it, it might take a little bit of the sting out of it when we do have to go back to mask mandatory. Because if that does ever happen, I think that could be a challenge for us because we have been mask recommended for a long period of time. And it might be, in terms of communication, less of a heavy lift if we're continuing to talk about it in open, so that might help. Because if we keep it in consent, and then, even if we have to go mask mandatory first week of July, it'll still be a lot of people thinking that the pandemic has passed us by. Why is this happening? Just more advance notice, I think, could be the reason why I try to keep it in open.
As I say that, based on what you're saying, then we should just keep it in open and not ever put it in consent.
Right.
For advance notice, that could be another way to communicate. Assuming that there are people that come to board meetings, there are people that view the board meetings. It's a way to communicate.
Okay. No, that makes more sense when you say it that way.
All right. Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the return to learning plan as presented.
Second.
Ms. Enriquez-Plumpa?
Yes.
Ms. Bell Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. DeGarden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lomas?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, Dr. Glover.
Wait. You're next.
Yeah. We have the 3.08 second reading and adoption policy. EBBC.
So I guess the motion.
Yeah, if I can come back up here, I've got all my notes in my thing. Sorry about that. So board members, this is the second reading, and I'm seeking your approval of policy EBBC. This is a policy that we do not have on the books. From MSBA, this is a policy that we do need to have approved by the 1st of July. It has to do with lactation support and lactation activities. The district will provide employees and students a minimum of 3 opportunities during the school day to express breast milk or breastfeed a child for at least 1 year following birth. Superintendent or designee will identify at least one room that is not a restroom in each school building to be used exclusively for lactation activities. The room will meet the requirements of state law, which also is access to refrigeration and water. The expectation is that we would ensure that the employee's duties are covered during break time to minimize disruptions. And also, we expect these employees to be particularly flexible and when possible to use planning periods, lunch breaks, routine breaks in their class schedule, or other free time to meet their needs. Policy does not entitle an employee to bring or keep an infant at work during the times when the employee is required to be working. If this involves students, if a students will be allowed to make up the work missed due to lactation activities, and it also, the policy does not entitle a student to bring their infant to school during the school day when the student is required to be in class. As a follow-up to last Thursday, board members, I shared the building plans of the location of where these spaces would be and the locations throughout the district. And with that, board members, this is the second reading, and I'm seeking your approval of policy EBBC. If you approve this tonight, we would meet that state expectation of approval by July 1.
So moved as presented.
Second?
Okay, Ms. Enriquez-Plemba?
Yes.
Mrs. Beltran?
Yes.
Mrs. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. DeGarden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Can I ask you a really
Thank
quick
you.
question about that?
Mhm.
So we have to adopt the policy by July 1st, but when do we have to have the rooms ready by?
So the expectation is the rooms will be up and running by the time that school begins in the fall.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Then we'll move to 3.09, appointment of Board of Education Treasurer.
So board members, annually the board appoints a treasurer. This can be a member of the board itself, or it can be a staff member who may fill the position. There's a recommendation. You can see the recommended language, and we seek a motion from the board to appoint a treasurer. The recommendation would be to appoint Dwight Lindhorst, the district CFO, as the treasurer of the Board of Education.
What would happen if we appointed Julie instead?
She'd be in Dwight's own place every day.
Let's just go wild.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Dwight Lindhorst as treasurer for the Ritenour Board of Education for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Mrs. Enriquez-Plemba?
Yes.
Mrs. Beltran?
Yes.
Mrs. Glover-Jones? Ms. DeGarden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lonis?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you, board members.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well done.
May the force be with you.
He's over the corner going,
Then we'll move to 3.10, appointment of the Board of Education Secretary.
Yeah, board members, same thing. Annually, the board appoints a secretary. This can be a member of the board, or it can be a staff member at your choosing. The recommendation is that the board would approve Michelle Clover, the executive assistant to the superintendent, and in the past, secretary to the Board of Education, that the board would appoint Michelle Clover as secretary for the 2022-23 school year.
So moved.
second.
Mrs. Enriquez-Plemba?
Yes.
Mrs. Beltran?
Yes.
Mrs. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. DeGarden?
Yes.
Ms. Lonis?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you, board members.
I was going to nominate Doug for that one.
Moving to 3.11, compensation rate increases. Dr. Mike LaChance.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
As you may recall, last year we brought some compensation considerations, which sometimes is considered other compensation, with part-time position rates. We have some additional recommendations this year. If we could open the attachment. So we have a list of part-time positions that we would ask your approval for an increase, and this is based on comparisons throughout the region, but also based on the need to attract and keep people in these positions. So as you can see, after-school tutoring increased to $40 per hour. Cafe recess supervision, we currently do not have a need or a recommendation to add those positions, but if there becomes a point that we would recommend $2 above the minimum wage. previously was set at the minimum wage, and we'd like to ensure that it's always above that by using that
So we don't
terminology.
normally have somebody in that we're paying?
We do not. We did have at one point, based on a request from administrators, and we had actually bus drivers filling those roles during, between routes.
Yeah.
But currently, we have not had a request for those positions. Crossing guard position has traditionally been set at minimum wage. We would like it to float always $2 above minimum wage, so that if minimum wage changes, we would change with that.
How many do we have?
Just one.
Which is?
The best one.
Have Marion, right.
Yeah, and we'll set them.
There are other ones, but the city's
Yes.
beautiful, because I know St. John's pays partly, okay, gotcha.
Interpreters, actually this has been difficult to get comparatives because we're one of the few districts that consistently uses our own interpreters. Many districts outsource that to various companies in the region, and we also seek assistance from those companies at times. But we would recommend an increase to $30 per hour. The lead nurse position, we would like to increase from a $4,500 annual stipend to $10,000, but that would include summer school. It also would entail assistance with some of our evening or weekend clinics for vaccines that have been needed in recent history.
Does the 4,500 currently include summer school and?
It does not. No, it does not. And typically, summer school compensation is going to be around $3,000 to $3,500 for the nurse.
So board members, if you would approve this, this would go into effect for next year.
Yes. Yep. A parent involvement liaison. I know Dwight just spoke about adding a full-time parent involvement liaison, which we are in the process of posting and advertising for. This is really a part-time position, increasing that to $30 per hour. We are seeking a full-time position, but there may be a need to supplement with some part-time assistance as well. Parents as teachers home visits, this has not been increased in quite some time. A home visit compensation was set at $28.50, which is just slightly over $11. Each home visit is about 2.5 hours. So this would increase it to $50 per visit. And again, these are for our part-time parents as teacher educators.
Don't we get reimbursed for the number of visits?
We do. We get reimbursed, and they triage the visit based on the family needs. And some of this was actually feedback that Mike Aiken got from an audit from the state, and they recommended increasing the compensation. And Mike and I spoke about this. The training for certification was set at $40 per day, which resulted in less than minimum wage for the training, and so we were recommending $15 per hour for that. Lead teacher, summer school, and professional development lead. So we have professional development leads and summer school leads in the summer, increasing that from $28 to $43 an hour. Summer academy nurse, and primarily this summer, but next summer the lead nurse would be in that role, but if we had a need for an additional nurse, that compensation would be $40 per hour. Summer academy counselor, similar as teacher, $40 an hour, and summer academy teacher assistant. It was currently at the current employee rate, which actually is somewhat problematic because we have at times employee teacher assistants that are special school district staff, and they're at a different rate than our staff, so it becomes difficult to set that rate. So a $25 an hour rate would be an increase for them, but also can allow us to have some consistency. Summer curriculum work and professional development that leads to a product is now $25 an hour. We'd like to increase that to $40 an hour. And then the teacher mentor rate currently is $400 for year one for the mentor and $200 for year two. And Evelyn has worked with the professional development committee and gotten feedback from mentors and teachers, and really recommending $800 for mentoring a new teacher. And then year two, it's a 2-year program. Year two, the $800 becomes a $600 stipend for mentoring the second-year teacher. We also mentor teachers who are not new to teaching but new to the district, and that would be $200 the first year and $100 the second year.
But only if they have 2 years experience or 3 years? So if they come to us with 5 years experience, they don't get mentored?
So this would be those with at least 2 years experience. So if they're coming in year 2 or year 5, they still are provided a mentor.
Can you explain, because I don't think I'm understanding the summer curriculum work professional development product. What does that mean again?
So our teachers help develop curriculum in the summer, and so they're paid for that product, but we also have professional development that will lead to teachers developing plans for instruction or developing something that at times perhaps even delivering additional professional development to their staff.
Oh, okay.
And so we would compensate them for that.
And so the compensation is provided when the product is delivered. So it's not necessarily paying for training, it's paying for the training that leads to a product being created.
Like they talked to us when we did the curriculum thing at the high school. We want this because we can develop blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Right.
All of this has already been included, taken into consideration for the budget.
Yes.
And just out of curiosity, are we running into situations where we don't or cannot get interpreters?
We do run into situations where it's difficult to get interpreters. Sometimes it's impacted by when we're notified that an interpreter is needed. So sometimes there's a short turnaround, and that makes it difficult for C&I department to secure the interpreter in time, so that does happen.
So have we ever considered, and I'm by no means do I think this replaces people, but have we ever considered there are devices where they're video remote interpreters where you just have like an account and it pulls up a real live person and that person's native language and that's on an iPad and that can be utilized as well?
So we have, I've talked, so Bayless School District uses that format. I've requested a conversation and some initial costs of what that would be. And just talking with the Bayless HR person, the amount is quite a bit higher than what we're paying our in-person people, but we could use that to supplement and to fill the needs. There's also, we do use LAMP. Sometimes they do that over the phone, and we'll also send somebody in person, but potentially looking for other ways to address that, as well as other ways internally we can make improvements to our method for requests and being responsive to requests. I hope to get some more information about, I can't remember the name of the organization that does what you mentioned, but.
If you're interested, I can reach out to some individuals that we utilize through our organization. Because I think about as we continue to think about the demographics for our students and families in our area, is this something that we talk about, we build or have our own internal interpretation or interpretive department, language services, because we know that that's a need for our demographics. So just.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have something you can send me, that would be great. I requested I wouldn't say a tour, but more information about their product and what their costs would be from the organization that Bayless uses, and they haven't followed up with me yet.
And there was another product that we looked at as well, and I think Doug Bray, you and your department looked at the translation tool. What was the name of the product that your department
I can't think
tested?
of it right now. It wasn't a lot different than the Google Translate tool that we currently that we use sometimes now, but I can't think of it off the top of my head right now.
I know one of them is Chirocom and Voice, VOICE.
Maybe voice that I reached it. It may be voice. That sounds familiar.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look that up now. And it's video conferencing, just like you had mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And
pulls
that's,
up the person.
yeah. If you'd send me some.
Quick question about the parents as teachers home visits as well. Does that, do they get reimbursed for mileage?
I don't believe they do get reimbursed for mileage, Dwight. Is that included in the grant reimbursement? I don't believe it is. No, they're also not reimbursed if the person doesn't show up. So if they go to the home,
Nobody answers.
no one answers, they're also not reimbursed, and that's according to the grant guidelines. So you can see compensation was fairly low
Yeah.
related to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the new compensation rates as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Enriquez Klumbutt?
Yes.
Mrs. Belgreco?
Yes.
Mrs. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Ms. DeGarden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lomas?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. LaChance. Moving to 312, personnel recommendations. Dr. Matt LaChance.
Board members, I'm here to present personnel items 1 through 247. I'm open to any questions you may have or comments you may have.
I do have a question about this 244 and 47. What does that extra duty assignment look like? I don't understand what that means.
No, that's,
Which one?
oh, they're
Oh.
certified, so they get that.
Yeah,
So that's just a stipend?
it is,
Okay.
yeah, for having that certification.
Yeah. It's,
So we actually
it's
have
to try to also to
Right, I
push them to
understand.
get
I
that.
remember that, but
Yeah.
it was up under extra duty
Yeah.
assignment, so I thought that there was some.
We thought of another
role or
way to
task
try to present that.
associated with it.
Yes. So this, to be honest, they call and always say, well, where's my additional? Because we send out contracts and they ask, where's my additional? We let them know. It's after board approval in
Gotcha.
June.
So we had 4 that became certified, is that what that says?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so they get that each year also. They receive that stipend each year.
And so it wasn't that they earned that certification this year. They have the certification, is that correct?
Correct. Some of them actually did earn it this year.
So say, I thought we had
I
this
was gonna
one.
say, we used to only have
I
1.
think we had one. I think the one was number 247 and 244 through 246 acquired this year.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about number 8. I just didn't remember like if we had talked about that position, and more so just wondering like what they'll be doing. Are they going to be in a specific class? Are they going to be like a floater?
So that position was part of the positions that Dwight shared in the budget.
Yeah.
So we started advertising and interviewing, posting, interviewing, and selecting staff members. It's part of the plan to also add a reading interventionist at each middle school and adding a TA to also assist with the academic needs of the students. And so it'll be up to the principal to determine where is the greatest need. And it could include working in a classroom with small groups of students with a general classroom setting, or it may also include some work with small groups of students or individual students who are receiving interventions.
But no requirement educationally for this position.
Not traditionally for teachers' assistants, no. Typically, the state requires them to have substitute certification, which has currently been reduced down to high school education.
For some reason, I thought we had changed where our teacher assistants had to have some type of certification. I remember something, I want to say it was, okay, maybe I'm getting confused.
How do we find that kind of stuff? That question, like how do we just go back and? board meeting notes to see if that's.
Well, I mean,
Should
we
be.
can have that conversation. So the question is the minimum requirements for a teacher's assistant. So a lot of our teacher's assistants that we've hired, they either have a bachelor's or some of them have a master's degree. We can go back some years and check if that was a requirement before, if we're making a mistake. We don't think we're making a mistake now.
No, there traditionally was a 60 credit hour. Traditionally, our TAs would be expected to have the same as a sub, which was 60 credit hours. And then when the state reduced that to high school diploma, it also impacted statewide. It was the conversation in human resources groups. It also impacted teacher levels too. So now, if the state were ever change it back the other way, then we would work with someone to make sure that they completed that.
If we're going to require something like that, wouldn't we have it in our policy?
Well, it would be in that job, it would be consistent in the job description in the posting.
Do we have other TAs?
We did.
So this is just a new one?
Yes, this is, we actually have several, I believe there's another one, number 6 on this line as well. And as Dr. Kilbright mentioned, so you'll recognize number 6 has returned and actually prefers the role of a TA. And so that was a separation months ago. And that's someone that has a high level of education.
Yeah, they have a certification.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
They
is-
have a certification.
Interestingly enough, we find we do get like high quality applicants for our teachers' aide positions. We do, even master's degrees at times, people leaving other industries, that sort of thing. But also want to give an opportunity for, when we think about movement in the organization for subs to acquire positions as TAs, to think about, advancement in their careers as well.
Yeah, only reason I remember the dialogue, and we may have not went ahead and proceeded with approving it, is just because it was at Hake Middle School, and there was a TA at that time, and they were also they helped with extracurricular track activities, and that conversation came about, and they were going to end up resigning if we would have made that transition. So that's right. So
We would have said
clearly,
they had to be certified somehow. Okay.
yeah. So that was back 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I think
I believe that is on that.
we had some dialogue about it.
I have had within the last month a conversation with the Department of Elementary and Secondary about certifications, and they indicated sub-certification. Because at times, and their point was there are times when the teacher's aide is taking over a class for whatever reason, and their minimum was sub-certification at the time. But things change, and it could change again in the future.
Any other questions?
I did just want to point out 238 through 243 is part of that effort as we're trying to really make the curriculum robust. Really, we're making an effort to continue the work of the coaches in the summer as they're making those modules for working alongside teachers and continuing to further develop curriculum modules.
I'd like to make a motion to approve personnel recommendations number 1 through 247.
Are there
Nope,
any that
nope.
we need to?
Yes, I need to
Oh, I'm sorry.
withdraw
That's okay.
number 130.
Sorry, I missed that.
That's okay. I tried to make double check.
I missed that too.
Oh,
What?
I thought
So it'd be
last
one-
year we didn't do that.
Yeah, we did.
We did it or didn't?
No, you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
1 through
Okay.
29 and 131 to whatever the last number is, 240.
Okay, so 1 through
129.
129.
You can do 1 through 247 excluding them.
Right, that's what I was
Right,
gonna
however
do.
you want to do
Okay,
it.
thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve personnel recommendations 1 through 247 excluding number 130.
That's pretty easy.
Okay. So, Mrs. Lonis,
Yes.
Mr. Garden,
Yes.
Mrs. Glover Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Belbrecco,
Yes.
Ms. Enriquez Plumwood,
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve number 130.
Second.
Mrs. Enriquez Pinbut?
Yes.
Mrs. Belford?
Yes.
No.
No.
Oh, sorry.
What?
It's 1:30, we're approving 1:30 right now.
Oh, abstain, sorry.
Yep, nope, you're good, you're good. Mrs. Belford Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lomas?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
My mind was elsewhere, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so confident.
Yeah, sounds like.
Moving to 3.13, board member comments. Does anybody from the board wish to make any comments? I'll say one, I've really enjoyed the graduations this year. I feel like I'm back on track. It makes me happy just to think of all those students of ours that got to cross that straight stage and they were dancing and it was a marvelous experience. So I'm glad to be back there. So I had to say something about that because I missed it.
On every graduation stage,
Oh,
that, yes.
Yeah, I missed it.
I appreciate all the work that all the staff done for the graduations to take place. I don't know how you all do it, but I'm like exhausted. But, so back in the saddle, but very exhausted. I appreciate all the efforts from everyone in those races because it was exciting to see the celebrations and hear the stories. Most definitely are always beneficial at the AEL graduation. It makes you appreciative and grateful in spaces. So.
Thank you for the feedback. I'll pass it along.
Anybody else have anything to share?
I did have one other thing I wanted to share. I know I had gotten a mailer from Congressman Corey Bush, and they actually are doing some work with students.
I saw it too, I meant to
that?
bring it tonight, yeah. We're in her district, and she's gonna have 2 people, right?
Yes,
About
2
2 students.
to be selected from every high school to be a part of the Missouri 1st District, and they're going to have recurring meetings. She has a student policy advisory board, and then she's willing to come to the schools and do visits. So I think that'll be something that'll be beneficial for us to most definitely get our students tapped into, especially with us having the LAC here, but then also to help our students have a voice, because we have
I meant to bring that to us.
great voices and great representation in our students.
Absolutely. You guys start getting it forward.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, that'll close our board member comments. We can move to 4.0, consent agenda items.
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 4.01 through 4.13 as recommended.
Second.
All right, Mrs. Enriquez Pinbut?
Yes.
Mrs. Belperka?
Yes.
Mrs. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. DeGarden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lomas?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Moving to 5.0 closed session to 5.01 to reconvene in closed session 6.0.021.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Sorry.
Mrs. Enriquez Pinbut?
Yes.
Mrs. Belperka?
Yes.
Mrs. Glover Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Garden?
Yes.
Mrs. Lomas?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Let's give a nice 10-minute recess so that we can go stock up on some more iced tea.